What if the person you love most was a perfectly crafted lie? Let me tell you what truly happened. The ring box sat on a coaster, nestled perfectly between a smudged receipt for 2 rice hours and a lipstick-stained cocktail napkin. Just 10 feet away, she laughed with him, her fingers tracing the edge of his sleeve. My name even floated into their conversation. And no, this wasn't a bitter farewell dinner. This wasn't some dramatic scene from a cheap drama. This was me, Caleb Donovan, returning an engagement ring to my fiancée, Nadia Winslow, while she was immersed in a date with her lover, completely oblivious to my presence in the same sophisticated lounge. But that's not the most insane part of this story. What transpired after I quietly exited that establishment changed everything. Not just between us, but between her and half our social circle. Because one crucial detail I've yet to share. The ring box didn't just contain the diamond, it also held a discreet flash drive. And what was on it? Well, I'll get there. But first, let's rewind a mere 11 hours before my entire world shattered. I woke up on the sleek, uncomfortable living room couch once more. It wasn't a consequence of an argument, nor my snoring. It was because Nadia frequently declared she needed space and couldn't bear to sleep beside someone who didn't understand her emotional landscape. Yes, that's what I'd become, the man who said goodnight to an empty hallway. I brewed coffee as usual, leaving a small, square, sticky note on the refrigerator, a reminder about her father's upcoming birthday dinner. She offered no response. Instead, she swept out of the apartment in a cloud of expensive perfume, dressed not for her corporate job, but for an outing far more clandestine. That's when the crimson flag started snapping in my face like a boat's torn sail in a gale. I checked her digital calendar. Blank. Her work messages? Yes, I knew her login. Judge me if you must, but trust me, it's relevant. Nothing was scheduled, but her favorite crimson stilettos were gone, the ones she only wore when she craved undivided attention. So, like the emotionally raw, anxious wreck I was, I remained home, feigning indifference until a message pinged from an old university friend at precisely 8:17 p.m. It was a photo. Nadia at the Velvet Hour, a trendy, dimly lit lounge downtown. Not with her usual companions, but with a man. Not just any man, but him. Tobias Sterling, the hilarious gym buddy from her social media stories. The one who, according to her, would never be interested in someone like me. Turns out he was. So I drove. I didn't call. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even intend to walk in, but I found myself doing just that. I watched. And then I left the ring. If you think that was audacious, wait until you find out what she did when she opened that box. She screamed, not because of the ring, but because of what accompanied it. Ready to learn the shocking truth behind a perfect smile? She didn't even notice the box initially. According to the bartender, who messaged me later with the details, Nadia returned from the restroom, all smiles, planted a kiss on Tobias's cheek like they were already an item, and ordered another round of drinks. She was positively glowing. Moments later, the bartender discreetly slid the small velvet box across the polished counter and said, "Your fiancé left this for you, ma'am." At first, Nadia chuckled, assuming it was a prank, but then her eyes fell on the tiny, carefully taped tag underneath. For Nadia, from the man who once believed you were honest. That's when her hand froze on her glass. Tobias, her date, apparently asked what was happening, but she remained silent. She opened the box. Inside, the engagement ring rested perfectly upright in its satin slot. And right beneath it, almost imperceptible unless one specifically lifted the velvet insert, was a tiny black flash drive. I knew she'd check it. Her insatiable curiosity guaranteed it. And when she did, when she finally found a moment of privacy and plugged it in, that's when everything began to unravel faster than I ever anticipated. Because that flash drive didn't just contain vague threats or scattered images. It held irrefutable footage. 2 short, damning videos. The first was a screen recording from my laptop dated 2 weeks prior, showing her phone screen mirrored onto my monitor by accident. She had been messaging the very same man she was now with at the lounge. The texts were brutal, laced with a cold meanness. Jokes about how Caleb would likely weep over a dented cereal box, and how the wedding will be a perfect excuse to milk him for one last substantial gift before I vanish. She described me as a pathetic little houseplant, constantly wilting and begging for water from a broken tap. The second video, that one was worse. And honestly, it caused a knot of nausea in my stomach just to edit. It was security camera footage from our apartment lobby, captured 2 nights ago. Her, sneaking in around midnight, hair slightly disheveled, giggling quietly with Tobias, stopping just inside the main doors to share a lingering kiss before tiptoeing up the stairs. I had requested the footage as a desperate last-ditch effort. I never truly believed I'd need it. Now, before you leap to conclusions and label me some kind of mastermind or revenge genius, let me be unequivocally clear. I was a complete mess throughout this entire ordeal. My hands trembled, my heart hammered against my ribs, and I constantly questioned whether I was going too far or not far enough. I didn't aim to destroy her. I simply wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted her to experience that moment of sickening panic I'd been living with for weeks. But what I hadn't planned for was her immediate reaction. The moment she opened that box and saw the drive, she abruptly abandoned the lounge without a single word. She didn't say goodbye to Tobias. She didn't finish her drink. She simply vanished. And 3 hours later, while I sat alone in a dimly lit parking lot outside a 24-hour pharmacy, fighting for a steady breath, my phone began to buzz. First once, then 3 rapid calls, then back to back to back. I didn't answer. I just watched her name flash across the screen like it still held some profound meaning. I couldn't bring myself to hear her voice yet, but then came the text, a single line that made my stomach drop. "Cliff, we need to talk. It's not what you think." Not what I think? She actually believed that would work? But I wasn't ready for the real twist. What she did the next morning caught everyone off guard, including her unsuspecting paramour, and especially me. And it started with a visit to my workplace, directly in front of my boss. I walked into work the following morning, hoping, even begging, that she would allow the silence to stretch between us for a few days. I desperately needed air. I needed space. Instead, the moment I stepped into the IT department's side entrance, I saw her. Nadia, dressed in the same crisp white blouse from the night before, standing outside my office door as if she belonged there. Her makeup was smudged, her auburn hair pulled back sloppily, and her entire demeanor screamed of sleepless desperation. I froze. 3 colleagues walked behind me, and I felt their steps slow, their gazes sharpening. Everyone knew Nadia. She'd attended company events, smiled for group photos, even brought homemade cookies during tax season, like she was auditioning for sainthood. But today she looked like a woman teetering on the edge of a precipice, desperately praying the ground would hold. "Caleb," she whispered softly, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I didn't respond, simply brushed past her and opened my door. I heard her plead, "Please," as she followed me inside, not even waiting for an invitation. Julian Maxwell, my manager, happened to be passing by at that exact moment and witnessed the entire scene. I saw his eyebrows lift ever so slightly. He didn't stop, but I knew this would be the primary topic of conversation by lunchtime. Nadia closed the door behind her and immediately began to cry. Not dramatic wailing, more like soft, frantic sobs. The kind that made you feel an involuntary obligation to offer comfort, even if she had just set your house ablaze. "I messed up," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I know I did, but you don't understand." I remained silent, leaning against my desk, arms crossed, staring at the polished floor, because if I met her gaze, I feared I would either erupt in a scream or shatter completely. "You blindsided me," she suddenly accused, as if I had been the betrayer. "You embarrassed me, Caleb, in public with that flash drive." I finally looked up. "You were on a date with another man." "No," she snapped too quickly. "It wasn't like that. It was just drinks." I laughed, a bitter, pathetic sound that escaped me all at once. "You were holding his hand, Nadia. You were flirting like I didn't exist, like I'd never existed." She looked away, her jaw tight. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Oh, so it was merely emotional betrayal then. Thanks for clarifying. A thick silence filled the office. She sniffed. I came here to say I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. I wanted to demand why. Why now? Why after all the carefully constructed lies? Why after calling me a sad little houseplant in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see? But instead, I asked the only question that truly mattered. Do you love him? She hesitated, and that was enough. Her eyes dropped to the floor, and I swear I saw something subtle shift in her expression. Not guilt, but a calculated strategy. She moved toward me, arms outstretched, her voice trembling. Caleb, please, we can fix this. You're not perfect either. And that's when I realized she hadn't come to apologize. She had come to control the escalating fallout. And that theory was confirmed not 5 minutes later when my phone buzzed with a new notification. A message. The screenshots from her Just Friends group chat had leaked. And it wasn't just to me. It was to everyone. My friends, my coworkers, my family. A private group chat had been exposed. She hadn't come to say sorry. She came to cover her tracks before I saw what else was coming. The screenshots hit like a freight train, not because they were entirely unexpected, but because of their sheer volume. Dozens of messages, lengthy paragraphs, intertwined threads. And the worst part, she wasn't simply venting or emotionally cheating. She was performing for an audience. The group chat included her gym friend, Vivian Porter, that just a friend guy from the lounge, whose real name I now knew was Tobias Sterling, and two other women I vaguely recognized from her social media. The entire thread was a cruel, digital circus, and I was the unwitting punchline. They had nicknamed me Cogs, like a small, easily replaced part in a larger machine, because apparently I was always popping up, trying to help when nobody asked. One message read, "He offered to massage my feet after yoga, again." Sweet, but I swear I nearly dry heaved in his face. Another stated, "He folds my laundry into neat little squares." I feel like I live with a librarian robot. But the one that gutted me, that truly twisted the knife, read, "Once the rings are on, I'll claim a new role overseas, and then I'll finally be free." I read that line 3 times, then a fourth. My fiancée, this woman I had spent 3 years meticulously building a future with, had apparently planned an exit strategy before she even walked down the aisle, and she found it amusing. She thought I was a joke, a soft, predictable backup plan. In just 15 lines of text, my entire future was rewritten as a cynical punchline. I sat in my office for a solid hour, door locked, my mind a tangled mess. Nadia had left minutes earlier, likely believing her performance of crocodile tears had bought her more time. She had no idea that her meticulously woven web of manipulation had just torn wide open. But the problem was, I didn't know what to do next. I'm not the kind of man who thrives in chaos. I don't make bold, decisive moves. I don't scream or throw things or disappear with a perfectly timed, cool final word. Instead, I spiraled. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the apartment we still shared, staring at the ceiling while she slept on the other side of the bed as if nothing had happened. At 3 or 1 a.m., I got up, went to the kitchen, and made myself a cup of herbal tea. She entered a few minutes later, wrapped in one of my old hoodies like it was her shield. "You saw it all, didn't you?" she whispered. I didn't respond. "It was just jokes," she added defensively. "You know how girls talk." Girls? That group included a man who had kissed her 2 nights ago in our lobby. When I remained silent, she took a step closer. "Caleb, you're overreacting." "I was just blowing off steam. I never meant any of it. I love you. You know I love you." No, I didn't. And the worst part, I wasn't even sure anymore if I ever really knew her. Maybe I loved the idea of her. Maybe I had built a relationship on assumptions and hopeful illusions. Because the version of Nadia who smiled across candlelight at dinners wasn't the same woman who typed, "Can't wait to finally be free of this guy," into a group chat, punctuated with laughing emojis. The next day, she left to stay with a friend for a few nights. I think she could feel the subtle shift, the quiet snapping of something inside me. But I didn't cry when she closed the door. I didn't even move. I just sat at the kitchen table, the cold tea still untouched, and realized I couldn't let her get away with this. She had humiliated me, lied to me, used me. But the flash drive, that was just the beginning. I had more than just proof now. I had leverage. And what I did with it next turned this entire thing into a storm no one saw coming. 3 days later, I made a decision that felt utterly alien to my nature, and it changed everything. 3 days after Nadia left, I did something wildly out of character for Caleb Donovan. I didn't sit quietly. I didn't hope for some neat therapeutic closure. I didn't wait around for an apology she was clearly incapable of delivering. Instead, I printed every single screenshot from the leaked group chat. Every message, every incriminating photo, every emoji-filled insult. I slid them one by one into a neatly arranged binder, labeled, of course, Nadia Winslow Correspondence, because even in chaos, I'm still a compulsive organizer. Then I made copies, 12 of them. I didn't know precisely what I was going to do with all of them yet, but I knew they weren't just for me. That same afternoon, Nadia's sister, Leah Ashton, called me. She was always the kindest one in her family, the only one who ever treated me like more than a convenient placeholder. "Cliff, what's going on?" she asked nervously, her voice tight with apprehension. "Nadia's freaking out. She won't tell anyone what happened." I paused for a moment, then said flatly, "She'll tell you soon. Trust me." Because I had a plan now. It had solidified late the night before, while I stared at the engagement photos we'd paid nearly $2,000 for. There we were, in matching denim, laughing on a park bench. Me, looking at her as if she were pure magic. Her looking directly into the camera as if she already knew this wouldn't last. I packed up a heavy box, the engagement ring, the binder, a fresh copy of the flash drive, and a handwritten note that simply read, "He deserves the truth, doesn't he?" And I mailed it to her father. Why would I send incriminating evidence to her pastor father? Because some truths demand a higher court. He was a pastor, a man who always spoke about honesty, loyalty, and character during our Sunday dinners. He adored me. I don't know if he truly believed I was good enough for his daughter, but he respected the way I treated her. He told me so once, while we were fixing a crooked picture frame in their hallway. I mailed the box first thing in the morning. By noon the next day, all hell broke loose. My phone lit up with missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Her father, her mother, even her aunt from South Carolina. But I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I didn't want to hear their shocked, embarrassed attempts to spin her betrayal into something complicated or misunderstood. Nadia showed up again. This time, she pounded on the apartment door, hard. "Caleb, what did you do?" she shouted through the solid wood. "Why would you drag my family into this?" I opened the door just enough to look her directly in the eyes. "You humiliated me in front of strangers," I said, my voice low and steady. "I figured your family at least deserved the same courtesy." She called me cruel. I called it an overdue reckoning. She was shaking, absolutely furious, and for the first time, not because she was caught, but because she'd utterly lost control. That's all this ever was to her. Control. The relationship. The narrative. The public image of us. "You ruined everything," she whispered, her voice raw. "No," I corrected her. "You did that. I just documented it." She tried to push her way inside, but I blocked her. "You need to leave, Nadia, and don't come back without a lawyer," she gasped. "Are you serious?" I nodded completely. She let out a hollow, panicked laugh. "You're not strong enough to follow through." Maybe not, but I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I closed the door, locked it, and finally, I felt like I'd just taken my first full, deep breath in weeks. But the very next morning, something happened that reminded me just how far she was willing to go to protect her carefully constructed lies. Because when I got to work, my boss, Julian Maxwell, called me into his office. The HR department has that sterile, suffocating silence that makes you feel guilty just for breathing. Julian didn't even look me in the eye when he asked me to sit down. Veronica Hayes, the head of HR, had a manila folder already placed on the table. I could feel my heart hammering in my throat. I hadn't even taken my jacket off before she uttered the words that made my entire body go cold. There's been a complaint, Caleb, from a third party alleging inappropriate digital behavior within the workplace. I blinked, stunned. I'm sorry, what? Veronica tapped the folder gently. Someone submitted a claim that you used company resources to conduct a personal smear campaign, specifically targeting your fiancée, her private communications, and her image. That you distributed unauthorized content and used internal systems to spread defamatory materials. Here's what happens when you expose a liar. They try to burn your world down. I wanted to laugh. Defamatory? She was the one who lied, cheated, and mocked me behind my back. And now, because I refused to keep my mouth shut, I was somehow the villain? This is retaliation, I stated flatly. I exposed the truth. I didn't use company tools. I used my own personal devices, my home internet, and the evidence came from my own relationship. None of this has anything to do with this company. Julian finally met my gaze, his expression tight. Cliff, I believe you, but she submitted this with screenshots, edited ones, from what we can tell, but it still triggered a formal process. HR has to document everything. You're not under suspension, but we need to be cautious. Veronica added, we'll need your full written statement, and we recommend limiting contact with anyone involved while we investigate. I nodded slowly. My hands were trembling, but I kept them clasped under the table. She wasn't just trying to save face. She was trying to incinerate everything around me until I was too buried in ash to fight back. I left the office with a warning not to discuss the matter with coworkers, but it was already too late. The rumor mill had activated with startling speed. I passed two people whispering near the break room. I heard my name. I saw the surreptitious looks. It didn't matter that I'd always been quiet, dependable Caleb Donovan, the guy who stayed late to fix broken printers and brought in extra cables when no one asked. All it took was one allegation, one whisper of impropriety, and suddenly I was radioactive. I spent the remainder of the day pretending to work, utterly unable to focus on anything coherent. My inbox remained eerily silent. No one messaged me. The absence of communication was louder than any words could have been. That night, I sat alone in the apartment, staring at a wall that still held framed photos of us. One of them was from last Christmas. Nadia wore my old flannel shirt, grinning, holding a mug of hot chocolate. She looked so real, so genuinely happy, like the betrayal hadn't already begun. I took the frame down and smashed it on the kitchen tile. It didn't make me feel better. The next morning, I received a voicemail from her. Not a call, a voicemail. Her voice was low, unmistakably shaken. Cliff, I went too far. I know I did. I didn't mean to jeopardize your job. I just panicked. Please call me back. Please. She was spiraling. I could feel it in every strained pause, every desperate note in her voice. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that the storm wasn't over, because someone else had joined the chaos, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, and they had information that could bury Nadia completely. The text came in at 2:14 a.m. I almost didn't check it. I'd been ignoring notifications all week, hoping the digital noise would simply quiet itself if I just stopped responding. But something about the number seemed vaguely familiar. When I opened it, I froze. Caleb, it's Rowan. We need to talk. It's about Nadia. It's worse than you think. At 2:14 a.m., a ghost from my past called, and what she revealed would blow the lid off everything. Rowan Miller was my ex. We hadn't spoken since before I'd even met Nadia. The breakup had been messy, emotionally charged, and largely my fault. I wasn't ready for commitment back then, and she wanted more than I could give. I never expected to hear from her again, and certainly not in the middle of this escalating nightmare. I hesitated. It could have been old drama, a setup, but curiosity, or perhaps sheer desperation, won out. I replied, call me. Not now. Tomorrow morning, please. At 8:07 a.m., my phone lit up. Cliff, I'm sorry to just dump this on you, she said, her voice a little breathless. But I know about Tobias, the guy Nadia's been seeing. He used to date my cousin. He's bad news. And there's something you really need to know. I closed my laptop, my heart already picking up speed. Go on. She didn't hesitate. Tobias isn't just some casual fling. He has a habit of collecting women, especially women in relationships, and then bragging about it. There's this private group, one of those disgusting conquest ledger forums where he posts everything. And Caleb? He posted about Nadia. My stomach dropped. She kept talking, her words fast and loaded with regret. Screenshots, photos, bragging about how easy it was, even claimed he was sleeping with her before you proposed. It felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady my breathing. You're sure it's her? I'm positive. She has a tattoo on her shoulder blade, right? A small, intricate constellation design. She did. No one else would have known that unless they'd been intimately close. Rowan sent me the link, the post, the entire thread. All of it. There she was. Nadia. Face blurred, yes, but unmistakably her. His caption made my skin crawl. Engaged to a doormat. She doesn't even ask questions when she comes home late. Weekends are mine. Countdown to wedding crash. T minus 23 days. 23 days. He had posted that 2 weeks ago while she was still pretending to plan a life with me. 23 days. That's how close I was to marrying a woman who was already a pawn in someone else's cruel game. I sat there staring at the screen, numb. And then a cold, calculated fury crept in. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It wasn't even about the group chat or the lies or the HR stunt. This was systematic humiliation, a coordinated dismantling of my life by people who saw me as nothing but a stepping stone. I gathered everything, every screenshot, every message, the full thread from the forum, and I sent it all to HR. I told them the complete story, laid out everything from the beginning, the flash drive, the harassment, the manipulation, the retaliation. Veronica responded within 2 hours. We're taking this very seriously. Thank you for your transparency. I'll escalate this to our legal team immediately. And then came the message I didn't expect, from Tobias Sterling himself. It was a voice memo, just 4 words. You started a war? I didn't reply, because I didn't need to fight a war. I'd already won. He thought he'd started a war. He didn't realize he'd just handed me the ammunition. Nadia just didn't know it yet, but she would, because the final piece, the one thing she'd feared most, was already on its way to her doorstep, courtesy of my mother. My mom, Marion Bennett, has never been the type to get involved in my personal life. She's sweet, quiet, teaches elementary school, and still handwrites Christmas cards to people who haven't sent her one in 5 years. But when she found out what Nadia had done, when she read the group chat messages, saw the forum posts, listened to my voicemail where my voice cracked just trying to explain, she didn't hesitate. I'm sending her a letter, she said, her voice firm. Not to be cruel, Caleb, just so she knows what kind of man she threw away. I didn't ask what she wrote. I didn't need to. My gentle elementary school teacher mother unleashed the final, most devastating blow. All I know is that Nadia received it 3 days later, hand-delivered. With it was a copy of our canceled venue deposit, the RSVP list with most names now crossed out, and a faded photo my mom had kept from years ago, me as a child, holding a handmade sign that read, I believe in kindness. Nadia texted me one word after that. Why? I didn't respond. She moved out the next weekend. No grand scene, no apologies, just a cab waiting downstairs and a few quiet knocks on the door to let me know she was taking her things. She left the key on the kitchen counter beside a candle I'd bought her last Valentine's Day. The wick was still unused. I kept the apartment, changed the locks, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in ages. Relief. Not victory, not spite, just the lightness of no longer being tied to someone who saw me as weak just because I was gentle. Who mistook kindness for foolishness. Who utterly underestimated the quiet guy with the color-coded spreadsheets and nervous laugh. This is what happens when you reclaim your narrative. You find peace. Nadia and Tobias? They didn't last. A mutual acquaintance told me Tobias ghosted her the week after the forum leaked. Word got around. She lost a few friends, and from what I hear, she's been keeping a very low profile ever since. I don't wish her harm, but I do hope she learns something. As for me, I started therapy. I adopted a chaotic but loving dog named Maple who occasionally chews my shoes and somehow makes the apartment feel warmer. I'm learning how to speak up, how to say no, how to stop apologizing for simply existing. And if you've made it this far into my story, I just want to impart this. You don't need to be loud to be strong. You don't need to seek revenge to move on. Sometimes the quietest exit leaves the loudest echo.